The Chartographers.
Hello! Everybody, you're listening to The Chartographers. It is a music-loving podcast for music-loving people where we take every single album by a particular artist and we rank it all from worst to first. It's a thing that we've been doing for quite some time now, 5 years to be exact. And obviously, once you start getting into your, coming up on your 60th artist that you've done an entire discography ranking of, obviously, you've gotten through so many. You've gotten through the greats. You've gotten through some obscure ones. But also, you've become so good at this podcast, so good at this award-looking at podcast, that you actually can kind of take risks and do what you want. Our season 4, our super small mini-season where we just did experiments and weird obscure shit, I think was very liberating because it just kind of showed we could do an episode on anything, and most importantly, people will listen to it because we're getting into some niche, obscure stuff, and people are loving it. The fans love it. That's all they keep talking about.
All 12 of them.
All 12 of them. So, as such, today we are so excited to dig into one of my favorite artists, possibly of all time. Just one of the more obscure, it's a largely instrumental artist for the most part that also experiments in so many other different genres and things. That's right. This week we're talking about the one, the only, the artist whose music sounds like an acoustic guitar laying down in a sunlit English countryside while trying to get high by huffing a 1970s synthesizer. That's right, we're talking about Bibio! Duckula if you're nasty. So, Bibio is actually the moniker of Stephen Wilkinson, and he is a kind young lad who was born in Wolverhampton in the West Midfields, England. And just happened to, throughout his life, kind of just bounce around between musical loves. He obviously loved a lot of electronic music and a lot of warp record stuff early in the day. Also ended up loving a lot of hard rock music as well. But as time went on and as he went to college, eventually discovered a great love of a British folk pastoral style. And ultimately, although he wanted to try and do all these different projects to take all those musical influences together, his friends convinced him to maybe you should just record it all under this name of Bibio, which is kind of named after, I guess, a fly fisherman's fly type thing, I guess. And long story short...
That's what Silver Wilkinson's name.
Well, I heard that Bibio itself was also a fly reference, too.
Oh, random.
Yeah, so...
He just really likes fishing.
He does like fishing. He's just a very pastoral dude, which I'm totally down.
There aren't more songs about fish. Anyway, look at this.
Right. But long story short, he's a wonderful, wonderful person, and he is a multi-instrumentalist, and his sound has changed and evolved so many different ways over the years, and we are going to talk about all of his albums and dissect them today. I am so excited about it. But most importantly, as much as we could go and rank all his albums, we have to have a committee together to put it all together. So, of course, that will include people like me. I'm Evan Sun. You might know me. I'm one of the interviews editors at Pop Matters. I write for a whole bunch of other places. But most importantly, I hope that you know me in the tweets and in the sheets as the host of this podcast, because I love this podcast, and if you know anything about this podcast, then you know the person sitting next to me, the Olivier St. Louis to my Bibio. That's right, we're talking about Taran O'Reilly!
We were approaching that joke, and I was like, God, there really aren't many options. You did, I think that is perfect.
Yeah,
that's
Bibio's
perfect.
girlfriend to my Bibio. You know? How excited are you?
I'm pumped. I really love Bibio and had checked out sort of his middle 3 albums, but hadn't done a lot of other diving into the big backlog. So it's been really fun this week. I had enough time, I started early enough that I've actually checked out all of his EPs and all of his rarities, at least that are on Spotify, which is quite a large collection of music. It was 12 hours or something, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a blast. Lots of fun. Tons of varied things to talk about, and I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, but here's the thing. And the thing is, you and I can definitely talk about Bibio all day long, but we couldn't do it without our next guest. He is the expert. In fact, you might already be familiar with him because he joined us on our ever so popular Weird Al Yankovic episode from, I don't know, season 2, whenever that was. Time moves. It's the whole thing.
That was still season 1?
Dear God, it's the monster we created. Most importantly, you can also find him. He is the editor and creator of the 2012's archive product, the 2010s.net. And also, he is the wonderful, rich baritone voice behind the musical output of Mikaija. That's right, the one, the only Nathan Stevens is here. Nathan!
Thank y'all. Really appreciate the intro.
Yeah, how you doing?
Just hype, man.
Very well. After a frigid and perilous time in Texas, we're finally opening into a spring that's been 70s and 80s and lovely, and Bibio's music has soundtracked that gradual release from sheer frozen terror pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super stoked about it. You've been a Bibio fan for some time, right?
Yeah, my introduction was actually outside of, like, I had known bits and pieces of him just because he was often lumped together with some of the chill wave people, like Neon Indian. And then I reviewed the Green EP for Pop Matters in 2014, one of my first reviews for Pop Matters. And since then, it's just always been checking in on him. Even if I don't love his releases, I'm always fascinated to see what he's doing. He's got an interesting musical mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can really see what is displayed in his discography, which includes the albums that we'll be talking about and ranking, which include his 2005 collections of demos, that is his debut album called Fee. There is his 2006 more sepia-toned effort, Hand Cranked. There is his slowly moving into actual song composition, Vignetting the Compost from 2009. There is his first true and proper breaking towards beats and whatnot with Ambivalence Avenue from 2009. There is what some would consider his more commercial breakthrough in terms of Mein Bokeh from 2011. There is his kind of larger pop improvement upon that in Silver Wilkinson from 2013. There is his, Steely Dan's cool album, A Mineral Love from 2016. There is his left turn towards full-on ambient with Phantom Brickworks from 2017. And then there is his slightly more pastoral renditions, which is Ribbons from 2019. Now, that is 9 full-length albums. It's quite a thing to get into. But the thing is, his discography is a little bit weird, because if you kind of take all the bits and pieces, he has, of course, tons of EPs, and also some records, which are considered albums, but kind of aren't, and some EPs, but really, more than anything else, there's 2 main things we need to talk about. First off, from 2009, there is something that he considers an album called The Apple and the Tooth. And that is such a weird thing to me because it does have new songs on it, but it also is the back half is entirely remixes of previously existing works. So I have a hard time considering that an album in terms of how we would traditionally rank things on this show, personally.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's only 4 new songs, and then I think it's all remixes of Ambivalence Avenue.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But yeah, it's definitely...
No, it feels like a companion piece, which is cool, but it doesn't feel like it stands alone if you don't know Ambivalence Avenue.
Exactly.
Completely. Fully, completely. I agree. So we're not going to count that. But the other one, and this is probably the trickiest thing and the biggest part of most contention, is Sleep on the Wing from 2020. It's basically a companion piece to Ribbons. It kind of has that same kind of pastoral but occasional electronic elements feel to it as well. But the thing is that it is a 10-track album that I believe is 28 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. And he doesn't consider it an album. He considers it an EP. It just happens to be a 10-track EP. Per an interview that I did with him around this time, he mentioned that he likes considering it an EP because he feels like an album has certain expectations with it, and he would consider an album to be closer to the 40-minute mark. So for his reasons, he thinks of Sleep on the Wing as an EP. I don't know about y'all. That's a weird argument to make, because a 10-track EP is not an EP. I don't care what the length is. I have a hard time quantifying. It's in the same way that one Sufjan album, the All Together People, it's, was 8 tracks and it's 60 minutes long. Oh, it's an EP. Okay, fuck off, Sufjan. Come on. Truly.
That's not how that works.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's kind of where I'm thinking about it. I've certainly listened to it this week as if we could be ranking it there, but I kind of want to get other opinions about where you feel it falls in terms of an official discography.
I'm perfectly comfortable ranking it, partially because I feel like it fits into that very weird... It reminds me a lot of that Thundercat mini album where the Giants roam.
Yeah.
Which had them changes on it. And it kind of had the intent of, here are some cast-offs, but some of the songs became bigger than that, such as them changes.
Yeah.
And it was so well produced that it was this is it's a slight album, but it's an album, at least from the listener's point of view. And that's how I feel about Sleep on the Wing.
That's exactly how I feel about it, too. It is also... He has a couple other EPs that aren't as long as this, but approach this length, but they also feature a song from an album. Most of his EPs are built around a single,
yes.
and then, have...
Take Off Your Shirt.
5,
yeah.
sort of companion songs, B-sides from those recording sessions, but this doesn't feel like that. It feels like its own piece. So yeah, I think we should rank it.
Okay, well, in that case, it is settled. We have 10 albums, and we're going to rank them in our 10 slots, and that includes Fee, Hand Cranked, Knitting the Compost, Ambulance Avenue, Mind Bokeh, Silver Wigginson, A Mineral Love, Phantom Brickworks Ribbons, and Sleep on the Wing. And of course, that's 10 albums, 10 slots. Nathan Stevens, special guest, potential Chartographers All-Star in the future, if we have you on again, and I think we might, you're lovely. The thing is, we have 10 slots, 10 albums. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to have discussions. Opinions can change. We can give and take. That's part of the process as it goes. But Nathan, I need to know, in your personal, humblest opinion, what would you nominate for our number 10 position?
It would have to be the one that, as we were talking before the recording, I simply said, "What the fuck is this?" Hand cranked.
How?
And it's not even an insult, I'm just genuinely confused.
Here's the thing that confuses me about Hand Cranked, is the fact that when you have Fee, his debut, which is a collection of all sorts of different experiments and songs that he has collected over the years, he ultimately gave those demos to one of the dudes from Boards in Canada, who ultimately got him signed to Mush Records, and that's how it kind of led out there. And so it's a collection of things. There's a coherence to Fee, which I think is so fascinating, and it may not be his greatest achievement, but you can hear little disparate elements of his sound kind of strewn throughout. Hand Cranked, it's like very deliberately his first proper studio full length. He keeps behind this fucking layer of static and fuzz and sepia tone weirdness that I fucking hate.
Studio is a strong word for what this is. I mean, I literally, at one point, I was like halfway through this album, like my third time through this week, and was like, God, what a piece of shit. Like, it's literally maybe one of my least favorite albums I've had the displeasure of listening to for this podcast. It just,
it's tinny.
There may be, the tinniness is honestly one of its worst attributes. There may be, like, decent compositions hidden in here, but they're recorded so badly. Like, the debut, which I've been pronouncing as Fi this whole time, but it could be Fee. Like, there's some nice things in there. There's moments of beauty, even with the sort of throwback recording techniques that he's using. Hand Cranked, I mean, there's multiple songs where I think all that you really need to do is, like, go into the mixing and, like, turn a specific mid-channel
Turn the treble down, yeah.
Or turn the treble down a little, and it would be bearable. But, like, for example, Above the Rooftops, can't finish it. So annoying.
It's like, the track before that was the one that gave me the most problem, Woodington, because the first half's okay, and then there's, like, a melodica that comes in, and I swear to God, it's, like, a semitone out of tune.
Yeah!
And it's just, like, That's not a perfect pitch or anything, but it, like, hurt a little bit. It was physically discomforting.
Well, and then there's some tracks where, like, it's both a semitone flat and a semitone sharp at the same time. Like, there's so much distortion happening that, like, it like, is almost painful sometimes. And like I said, there's a couple compositions, like, I don't hate Quantock. I'm fine with, like, Zupraxophone. But, like, these are slim picking.
Yeah, it is. I starred every single track of his that I have, and it's one of those things where I don't think anything here cracked like 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it was just composition. It's just hard to listen to. And then he just recently did a vinyl reissue of it, and it sold out. I'm like, what fucking idiots are buying this album? And the thing is that, Bibio, if you're listening, we love you dearly. We're gonna get to your good stuff. I just have a great aversion to this album, and I am perfectly fine. We tend to wallow on bad albums. I don't need to talk about this thing anymore.
Yeah,
I
we can
am
move
in
on.
full agreement with you of putting this at number 10 on our list.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's move on.
Good. And the thing is that his discography is so rich and so wonderful and so incredible that now we're starting to get to the point of, like, now that that's out of the way, I feel a lot better because, like, there's just a lot of good things that are happening here. I don't hate anything else of the rest of the discography like I do with Hand Crank. So, Taran, I'm just going to toss it to you. Number 9 slot of what we got. What would you put?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, as much as there are highlights here, it has to be Fi. I think that Cherry Blossom Road is a perfectly pleasant ambient
it's just
opener.
This lovely just cloud you're floating on.
I think Bewley and White is a triumph, especially this early. I think it's beautiful. I really enjoy it. Puffer is solid. And then, it unfortunately falls into some of the same problems that Hand Cranked has. There's just...
But it's listenable.
It's listenable, but it is far too long at 17 tracks. And... there's diminishing returns. For diehard Bibio fans, which definitely exist if I'm looking at the play counts.
They're going to sell out the fucking hand-cranked vinyl reissue.
Yeah, I mean, there's things to like here, for sure, but it's inessential.
What do you think, Nathan?
No, I would agree with that, and I would go, as you referred to earlier, Bibio's buds with Boards of Canada. And this reminds me of...
Sorry.
Look, I gotta get my alliteration in sometimes.
Yeah,
but
I know.
but this reminded me of like a major key guitar focused early Boards of Canada record of like the lo-fi, the slowly unspooling melodies, all of this extra ambient or field recording noise, which is really cool. The problem is that Boards of Canada does it and it's eerie. And it's off-putting, but in a very entrancing kind of way. For Bibio, it's just... Yeah. For Bibio, it's like, I've taken a nice bath, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's no extra hook beyond that. It's just like kind of pretty ambiance that's going on. And as you were pointing out, especially with the first 3 tracks, there's some really solid hooks and like these burbling noises that are really just lovely. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the album just kind of falls into this very low-key ambiance that's not enough to drag you in, whether it's because there's something more happening or it's more beautiful. It's just kind of there.
Yeah. It's one of those things where because it doesn't have that sepia sheen that Hand Cranked has that just kind of ruins what the compositions are, there's an accessibility to Fee. I do feel like because it is really a collection of songs and things I've been working on all this time, there's maybe not less of a coherence to it, but the moments that work for me, it was Willow, this 2-minute thing of just very light beat, just very simple strum thing. There's an atmosphere to it that just envelops me. It is one of my favorite things he may have ever done. I'm not even kidding.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But that's just one song out of 17. And some of these are like 70 seconds. Some of these are 3 minutes. Bewley in Grey is my favorite of the many Bewleys that we have across this thing here.
And then there's a hint at the end towards what we were going to get later, Poplar Avenue, a 17-minute,
well,
18-minute?
in the reissue they did, it was 17. I guess on whatever the original format is it came out in, it was only like 6 minutes or something like that. So then they kind of expanded it out. But it's one of those things where as a kind of like pseudo-ambient soundscape, I dig it. It's one of those things. I don't always love it when he goes to a full 10+ minute territory, but he can make it work. And I also agree. I'm not going to be too mad if Phi goes down this way, but I will also just kind of throw out in my end, it's not as bad, but I do have to briefly point out my other potential on there. And again, I'm not going to be mad either way, but I'm honestly going to throw out vignetting the compost, and here's why. The biggest thing for me on this one here, when he starts moving into more song-based territory, I love it. I love hearing him incorporate his vocals more. I love hearing more traditional song structures. It's not exactly the same as Hand Crank, but there is still that little bit of the hiss and crackle kind of carried over. Not as bad as Hand Crank, not as overtly dominating the entire album as Hand Crank, but there's a little bit which just kind of takes some moments off the vignette in the compost and just kind of weighs them down a little bit for me, which is a shame because Weekend Wildfire for me fucking slaps like hell.
Yeah.
There's a gorgeous guitar melody he has on the Ephemeral Bluebell. I really enjoy a lot of compositions on here, but if I'm weighing the number of songs I like on vignetting, which I think are more than 5, but then I also think about I still have to kind of push through a little bit less, but the sheen is still there, that little crackle sheen of Hand Cranked. It's kind of a give or take composition, so that's kind of I'm just tossing that into the mix just for the sake of.
I would personally definitely put Compost above Fee, and Vignetting Compost is one of the cuddliest albums I've listened to recently, and it's adorable.
Yeah.
And there's just these little. It feels like kind of the crux of some of his work, which is he wants to make you feel like you're in a garden hanging out. And that is the first album, and I think a majority of those compositions land within that feeling, within that vision. So I would definitely put it above Fee.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would too, just because Fee is nice, but Vignetting the Compost actually has things like big takeaways that I could see myself coming back to on its own. Like Fee would be a nice, like, you need ambience or just like nice things on in the background while you're doing something else. Whereas
Doing
like
the
Vignetting the
dishes.
Compost, there's actual songs on here that I would seek out. Like you mentioned Weekend Wildfire. I do think that's really strong. I even really like the opener, Flesh Rots Pip Zone. I'm down with Greater the Pits. So yeah, I think that there's a few more moments of like clarity on this record that aren't really there on the previous two.
So Nathan, what you're trying to say is you're just looking for your Mrs. Compost, is what you're saying.
How can you hate an album that has a title called Mr. and Mrs. Compost? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, I'd say based off of that by itself, I think we're fine with putting 5 down at number 9. It sounds like.
And it's not. I want to reiterate. I don't think Phi's a bad album at all. I think it's pretty solid, ambient, folk, all of that stuff. It is such a step up from Hand Cranked.
It came out before. I don't understand what happened in the process. I really don't.
I think I do understand. Is that Phi is, as you mentioned, it's a collection of recordings that he made over the course of 4 years while he was studying music. And so it's, there's a little more time for, I think, each of the ideas to have presented itself. Whereas then the following year, he released an album that was pretty much the same length. So that means that he absolutely wrote and recorded it in a much shorter amount of time. So it sort of falls into that sophomore slump that I think a lot of artists run into. And thankfully, he got over that pretty quickly.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, number 10, Hand Crank. Number 9, Phi. Nathan, what would you throw at number 8?
This is going to be a controversial pick, I feel like, and I need to apologize ahead of time to one of my favorite ambient writers, Daniel Bromfield, my friend. Phantom Brickworks. I'm not a fan.
Oh,
I hate to say it, but
okay.
I want to hear other people's opinions on it because people who like this album really fucking like this album, and people who don't like Bibio got into him because of this record. So I want to hear what y'all's opinions are as well.
I'd say my biggest thing before we even talk about this is, where do you fall on the scale of ambient?
I am a massive fan of Stars of the Lid, of Tim Hecker, of if you go more harsh, people like Ben Frost and stuff like that. I really do love ambient music. Tim Hecker might be in my top 5 artists of all time. I adore his stuff. The problem that I have sometimes with the genre is this will be released on the 2010s, cross-promotion. I just interviewed Ellery Saxel, who is a composer from New York, and she just made a record that felt very similar to Gas's Pop. And in terms of, like, ambient techno, mostly to reflect nature, to reflect the seasons. And she said in the record, she was on record was talking about how you can do a repetitious phase for 2 minutes and it doesn't make any sense. You can do a repetitious phase for 10 minutes and suddenly becomes revelatory. And the thing is, Phantom Brickworks tries to do that, but for me, it never becomes revelatory. The first half of it just feels like wallpaper to me.
I disagree. And
but I want to hear.
Yeah, damn right you do. The biggest thing, so for me, is one of the things where you mentioned Daniel Bromfield. He and I, for the past 3 years, have been doing the best ambient records list for Pop Matters as well. And so we exchange a lot of ambient stuff back and forth. And it's one of those things where, like, ambient is such a hard thing to define in terms of itself, because at its worst, it is just sonic wallpaper. You are completely correct. But it's also that thing where if you hit that groove, if you hit that thing, it's kind of like, one of my favorite ambient records of all time is by Marcus Pop. He goes under the name Oval, and then he put out this album called 94 Discount. And basically, it's like he was a glitch artist. It's that thing where, like, if you, back when you had CD players and you hit the fast forward button and held it down and just kind of skipped through the songs, like, kind of did that thing. He took all of that sound, that little sketchy part, and turned it into these 20-long-minute, like, ambient things, and it was just, like, a revelation when I heard it, because it was just like, how can you do a 24-minute song where it sounds like all of these different things are moving at different tempos and times, and yet it evolves, and it changes, and it's something where you aren't always able to articulate, but an ambient artist, especially an ambient composition that works, always knows how long to stay and how long to leave, and it just leaves you with that feeling. And it's always a bad ambient artist will push it even as far as like 15 seconds too long, and it takes you out of the moment. I think ambient by itself is one of those things where it can be kind of that mental wallpaper or the thing to have in the background to distract your subconscious while you're doing it, but other times it can absolutely be art. And for me, Phantom Brickworks, I would not put it in my list of the greatest ambient albums of all time. I would say that when this came out in 2017, when I was doing the ambient list, it wasn't in my top 10 ambient, but it was in the conversation. And I think that's kind of how I ultimately feel about it. I think that thing where he goes a little bit harsh on tracks like Ivy Charcoal, when it gets a little bit more minor key, a little bit more sinister, it adds character to it, but it doesn't have the same overall effect for me as the rest of this album, because it is supposed to be this quiet whisper of a thing. And even when I interviewed Bibio, he mentioned how, like, for him, he viewed it more as a side project than anything else, which is why also he put out the EP, Phantom Brickworks 4 and 5, kind of implying that this by itself was, the 3 Phantom Brickworks pieces that he has in there were its own self-contained things, and he just kind of continued onward. I think it's a phase for him. I think it's something that he wants to do because there have been instrumental ambient bits all throughout his career, and for him to push full on to it, I think it's an interesting revelation. I feel like it does need a little bit more time and just a little bit more tuning to kind of get there, but I will say, I put on this record so many times, especially like if I've had like a rough morning at work or something like that, just to have this on in the background is kind of like this weird calming presence on here. It's just one of the things where I do like that it's an ambient record, but it adheres to the song times that you would expect for like a traditional like song structure, 3 or 4 minutes or whatnot. So it's one of those things where if we're debating between this and Vignetting the Compost, like in terms of that kind of thing, I could see the argument being made for it, but I just want to say that I don't necessarily dismiss it as wallpaper myself.
So it's actually very funny because this is where I was also going to breach the topic of Phantom Brickworks, although I also, because there are certain tracks on here that are very successful for me, like I think the opening track, this week I made sure that when I was listening to Phantom Brickworks that I was paying attention to it. So I wasn't just letting it wash in the background.
Right.
Because I don't think, especially for ambient music, if you don't focus on it, you won't really have an idea of what it's doing.
Yeah.
So the title track, Phantom Brickworks 1, as it were, the last like 4 minutes like kind of make me messed up like pretty consistently. So I think that it's a 13-minute song, but what it does is so successful. It really like unlocks something for me. But then there are other tracks on here that aren't as successful. But I do think it's hard to rank with the other albums because it's such a different animal that I could put it here. I could also put it at number 4. Like that's how much, like, depending on the mood. If I'm in the mood for ambient, I think it's really well done.
I still like it better than Hand Crank, though. It's weird.
I do want to say it's not like I think it's a bad ambient record at all. The second half of it actually caught me a lot more. It felt like it had a bit of startup time to really get into kind of as engaging as ambient can be. But I agree with that premise of it is just such a screwball, different left field kind of thing as compared to everything else in the discography, that as I was re-listening to his discography, that might be part of it, of like, he does the beat tape thing, he does the neo soul thing, he does the guitar works, he does this, and then a full record of ambient is just like, this feels like it's a parallel world to everything else, so it's a little hard to deal with.
It's funny that you say it feels like a parallel world, because I was reading that he started work on some of these tracks as early as 2007. So he took basically an entire decade to finish this album while he was doing all of these other things that we're about to talk about.
Interesting.
Well,
that is interesting.
I think it's one of those things where, as much as like I will always stand a good ambient record myself, I also kind of understand that in terms of how much of a left field it is for discography, if we put it at number 8, it's not because it is his third worst album or anything. I just feel like the Bibio discography, he created the curveball, so he has to suffer the consequences of it. And it's one of the things, it is a lovely record, and I would encourage people to listen to it actively, but it's hard to rank waves of growing and building and cascading synths versus acoustic guitar, funk pop excitement, you know? So I do think that in terms of, it's still better than hand crank. So yeah, I'd personally be fine at this point with putting Phantom Brickworks at number 8. You've convinced me. Y'all convinced me.
Okay, I'm comfy with that.
I think I would still put Vignetting the Compost below it, but I'm not going to fight super hard. So
what do you think,
Okay.
Nathan?
that it just
I would definitely put Vignetting and Compost above, but I might be outvoted here, and that's totally fine.
That's fine. We could put Phantom Brickworks at number 8, but I would say at that point, let's put.
Vignetting the Compost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that? Okay, cool. This is great. Look how nice we're getting along. It's so wonderful. We're so cordial. And that means that we have Hand Crank at number 10. We have Fee-Fi at number 9. We have Phantom Brickworks at number 8. We have Knitting the Compost at number 7. We're into the top 6, which means it's now time to draw out the knives. Nathan Stephens, you monster. What would you nominate at number 6?
This is hard to say because I definitely have we'll get into them later, a couple that I'm like, these are like top tier, I'm going to come back to them constantly. And then there are 3 records that it's more of, I'm only going to come back to the highlights, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think I'm going to put up A Mineral Love. Yeah. I apparently have said something blasphemous. Which is fine. It's fine. You said the knives were coming out. Is that like your number 1, Evan?
Walk us through your logic on this one here, Nathan, my boy.
I think one of the things that is both his greatest strength and occasionally his greatest weakness is kind of this Dog's Breakfast album of like, here's a neo-soul song, here's an Irish folk song, here's a Scottish, here's an ambient song, yada, 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 yada. And the thing is, they can almost feel like mixtapes, which can work really, really well for some of them. I feel like A Mineral Love has sequencing that I'm not quite completely behind. In terms of the flow of the album really does feel janky. It goes back and forth. The puzzle pieces don't quite fit. It goes all over the place. And I still can't... I think you probably love this song. I have no idea if I love or hate The Way You Talk. Because it is like Bibio with Gautier doing like the most 80s cheese. Like if only we could have the Careless Whisper saxophone in the middle of it was the only way to make it more kind of 80s on that. That's my takeaway from it. Although it does have St. Thomas, which is probably my top 5 Bibio songs. Because it's just a gorgeous Quicksilver guitar composition. So those are my thoughts. I like it.
Do you want me to go first, Evan?
Go ahead.
So
speaking of Dog's Breakfast, your opinion.
yeah, no, I mean, it's funny that you say that because I actually really like the variety here because
Cool.
I think that on some of his other albums that are have similar disparate genres going on, the sequencing is almost a little too like segmented. Like here's your quiet section and then it ramps up and here's the energetic section and so
Okay.
I really like that there's some variety here. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. 5 of the songs on this album are in my top 10 Bibio songs.
Okay.
I also think that there are sections where it's not as strong. Like I'm not a huge fan of Why So Serious or C'est La Vie or Rentails. And so that's like a pretty big mark against it for me. But then like I think Town and Country is fantastic. I didn't know that he would ever write a song like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but Rexira is my favorite Bibio song. It's short and it's beautiful, and I have absolutely no complaints. I love the lyrics. I love all of the guitar work. I weirdly really love Gasoline and Mirrors. I'll get into this in the happy hour too. I think pretty much every time he collaborates with Wax Stag, it's just one of my favorite things he's done. He's done some remixes for them that are really great. I kind of can't say enough good things about this record. It's not my number 1, even though this was my introduction to Bibio, and it's definitely the album I've listened to the most easily by like a lot. But it's not my number one because I does have some issues. But
yeah.
Evan.
So yeah, long story short, if this isn't my number one, it's pretty much close to it. And the reason is because I, more than anything else, I love my indie weird shit. I love it when my indie weird shit embraces pop structure. And that is just a through line throughout this podcast, throughout my life, throughout everything. And to see the way that Bibio grew from, the jump he does from Vanilla de Campos to Ambivalence Avenue is huge, because all of a sudden now he's working with wah and funk guitar things. He's working with kind of more beatscapes. He's kind of doing that while still being his own Bibio-y acoustic-y self. And then between that and then Mind Bouquet and then Silver Wilkinson, it's just this gradual kind of like progression in terms of like figuring out what he wants to do. And I feel like Mineral Love is almost the zenith of what pop Bibio is. And I mean that in the best, most complimentary way. Because by the time you have the little fucking Steely Dan little sax line coming down and feeling, by the time that you, the fact that you open up with this little fucking gorgeous like acoustic part of pedals on here, and of course Town and Country is just, I think, one of the finest compositions he ever made, closing out with the gorgeous synth lines that light up the sky. It is a fucking fantastic record. It is one where there is diversity in it, but it still feels like it comes from a place, because the Bibio of Mineral Love and the Bibio of Silver Wilkinson are two different Bibios. There's a correlation between them, but I can still hear the differences in between all of that too, which is, I think, amazing to me. I would say, in a weird way, Mineral Love has more DNA in common with Ribbons than it does with Silver Wilkinson, just because of the style of what he's going for, and in terms of still trying to figure out that fine line between acoustic and pop. I think the way that he is constantly battling that, there's a tension in there, and that tension is so compelling as a listener, where even if I don't love every single moment of it, like, why so serious? I mean, I understand it is so serious, it is goofy. It is fucking goofy as shit. And it's one of those things where, like, I kind of enjoy it as just a little bit of a trollop pop moment that it is. And so therefore, like, I will not stand here for any Mineral Love slander. And yeah, I understand it may not be number one, but I love this record and all that it aims for and all that it achieves. So I appreciate your opinion, but I'm going to go ahead and toss something out. I've honestly been kind of like, if I was in this position, what would I put at this point? And this is one of those things where, looking at the remainder of the albums that we have here, it's fucking tough, man. It really, really is. And for me, this is like gun to my head at this point, because if I were to think about what's going in our number 6 slot, it's tight, but I think I just kind of have to go with Ambivalence Avenue. And the reason is because there are moments on this album that are fucking incredible, and there are moments that are frustrating as shit. And it's hard to kind of like balance some of those things together. Like, man, I really like the Palm of Your Wave. How it's this kind of like low-key minor thing. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that I think I would enjoy Fire Ant if it didn't have 2 fucking minutes of random fucking intro and another 2 minutes of fucking outro to try and get to its goddamn meat. You know, like, it's one of those things where I think Ambivalence Avenue was a breakthrough for him in so many different ways. And there are moments, the little fucking funk guitar that opens Jealous of Roses is just subliminal. It is so great. I constantly am battling this album. I still, after weeks of listening to it, don't know if I like Sugarette. Like, it's kind of like, I'm kind of in this whole different world.
Completely.
Yeah, you know, and so that's why, like, for me, it's kind of like down to a couple things. I would not put Mineral Love at number 6. I would throw out Ambivalence Avenue at this point.
I'm totally cool with that, because Ambivalence, you hit the nail on the head, because it is the album that I think I'm the most frustrated with, because it has some of the highest highs, but it also has these troughs where it's like, I think part of the problem is that Bibio often got lumped with a bunch of the chill wave artists at the time and the beatmaker artists at the time, but he was trying so many other things simultaneously that it sometimes felt like, because he was such a polymath, he wasn't dedicating to the beat tape stuff as the same way you would see a Baths or a Nostra Thing or a Shlomo, who would say, no, we're going to do an entire record that's going to be beat tape, you know, really a dedication to Dilla or Madlib, except you don't have to have anyone rapping on it, because we're going to do these interesting melodic things over the top.
Yeah.
And Ambivalence Avenue, when it goes into that avenue, jokes, doesn't quite get there, because I can't, when it does the beat tape stuff or some of the more lo-fi kind of stuff, I can't hear anyone rapping over it, but it's also not interesting enough to just stand on its own. But as you were saying, it has these incredible peaks of just like some of his best guitar playing, some of his best hooks. It's a frustrating album.
And apparently his most popular song of all time, Lover's Carvings.
Which is weird to me. Like, I like that song,
Well,
but it's weird.
Evan found it. So it was used very prominently in like a prototype video for Google Glass. It was like a proof of concept. It was before they had any of the actual like technology done and ready to show the public. But it was just sort of like showing off what some of their ideas for it were.
It's like a 2-minute and 30-second like ad.
And it was like a 2-minute ad. It has 22 million views.
Jesus Christ.
And it's unlisted. Because I'm sure I'm sure that it's hosted on YouTube, but it's Google, so they just used it as like promotional. But so that is like
a guy literally goes into a bookstore and buys a book of how to play ukulele, and by the end of it is video calling his girlfriend and literally playing the guitar strug pluckings to lever carvings after listening to it while walking across the streets of New York. Like it's
so I think that's pretty clearly like that exposed him to a large audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's I mean I love that song.
Wild.
Yeah.
I love that song. I think the title track, Ambivalence Avenue, is
yeah.
like it almost hints at where he went on Wake Up. It's like almost like South Asian inspired, but not quite.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, that's kind of this is up next somewhere for me. I'm actually gonna throw out one other option.
Oh my god.
Okay.
And that would be, and I think I'm going to upset some Bibio fans with this, it would be Ribbons.
See, that's surprising for me, but I want to hear what... Yeah, go ahead.
I enjoy Bibbins.
Bibbins. I enjoy
Bibio
Gibbons
ribbons.
too. Yeah.
Bibbins.
Love the Gibbons.
Bibians. I enjoy Ribbons, and would not be surprised at all if it ends up higher than this. This album took almost too long to open up to me, where I'm like almost annoyed with it at this point in this week. Like I've been listening to this album, for the past 2 weeks almost, and I'm finally sort of getting it to connect with me, but it's still holding me at arm's length a little bit, and I can't even necessarily tell you why, because it seems like I should like it. Mm-hmm. Like, there's things that grab me on like Before is, or like Old Graffiti is really solid. I think It's Your Bones is absolutely stunning. But then, for example, Curls is also by far one of his most popular songs, and I don't get it. It's not special to me. And that's sort of this album as a whole. There's just a lot of like, yeah, it's okay.
That's interesting because this album clicked with me immediately. Not in terms of like just I love it, it's one of the greatest albums of all time, but like I said earlier, walking around in the springtime in Texas with this
is
going
the soundtrack
on,
for that.
It's maybe it's for me it was an environmental thing. Of my mind was already on springtime, and it said yes, this is the exact sound that needs to be.
Yeah.
For me, it's one of those things. I know Taran's process is that sometimes he goes and, like, after he listens to everything, he then kind of puts his favorites in kind of a row in a playlist and kind of listens through those on there. And initially, the internet went out last night, so as I was kind of going through my Bibio stuff, I just had to go off of Spotify and onto just my regular hard drive where I have all of these. And in terms of ranking things, I then kind of sorted it by the 1 to 5 star ranking I did, and it's amazing to me how many 4-star songs were off of Ribbons. It's one of those things where at 16 tracks, it's a bit long. I'm not gonna lie about that. But it's one of those things where the fucking weird-ass synth experiment that is Pretty Ribbons and Lovely Flowers weirdly doesn't sound out of place on this record here. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where between that and, of course, the having cow moves and the art of living, there were so many other wonderful little, like, moments on
it
here.
Takes me out
and also watch...
On brand! Yeah. On brand!
That cow needs to get a feature credit. I hope he gets a Grammy. But also, Watch the Flies is probably one of my all-time favorite
I like that
songs.
one too,
That song just fucking rocks my shit. And it's one of those things where I'd say it's a little bit too long, and it's kind of weird because I constantly feel like Ribbons and Sleep on the Wing, they're kind of two parts of the same whole. And the thing is that, like, I think there's a lot of things I like on Ribbons. I just think Ribbons could have used a little bit more focus. And I think for me, that's kind of the thing where, like, Sleep on Wing, I feel like it's truly that classic double album thing where I think if somehow he was able to take all the tracks on Ribbons and Sleep on the Wing and was able to combine them into, like, a solid 12-track collection, he would have maybe one of his greatest albums of all time.
I agree.
Is Isn't this one of the things we've kind of talked about, though, is because Fee is so much better than Hand Cranked because Fee was edited over 4 years.
Yes.
And this is like, again, best worst thing about Bibio is that he will indulge any extraneous activity he wants to do, but not necessarily have the time to edit himself down.
I think that is an absolutely fair point as well.
And I didn't necessarily mention this when we were talking about A Mineral Love, but that is one of the my biggest complaints about that album and about his work as a whole is how you'll have like for example, I mentioned Gasoline and Mirrors is one of my favorites because it's a 5.5-minute song and the first half is perfect, but then it has 2 different ambient outros. And that's just sort of something that happens a lot over his discography where he'll have like a beautiful piece and then he'll muddy it by making the song 6 minutes instead of 4. And I feel like that happens some on this album too.
Yeah. I would say that I think I would go with Ambivalence Avenue at this point, but I really enjoyed Ribbons, but I get your complaints for sure. And it's interesting to see, this is the whole thing about the Chartographers, is you can see the themes, the weaknesses, and the strengths of an entire artist over their discography.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah.
In that case, I'll be brave, controversially brave. I'd say at this point, let's put Ambivalence Avenue at 6.
Okay.
Ribbons at 5.
I'm okay with that.
Can we
agree
with that? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, let's go ahead and do that. That is Ambivalence Avenue at 6. That is Ribbons at 5. And for me, that, of course, leaves it at number 10, Handcrate. Number 9, Phi. Number 8, Fender Brickworks. Number 7, Veneering the Compost. Number 6, Ambivalence Avenue. Number 5, Ribbons. Leaving us, Mamboka, Silver Wilkinson, A Mineral Love, and Sleep on the Wing. And I just gotta say it right now, before we get into it, if we're gonna put Ribbons at number 5, then I think Sleep on the Wing has to be next, personally.
I am just such
Apparently not.
Well, no. I'm just such a sucker for that type of music that I know it's like directly feeding into my brain. Of like, I grew up, my dad was always playing like Nickel Creek and Windham Hill when I was growing up, which is like, you know,
so you're like the perfect audience for this, yeah.
No, it is like he figured out how to worm his way into the dopamine center of my brain and just kept pushing that button over and over again.
Don't let Evan gaslight you about your feelings for Sleep on the Wing. Because Sleep on the Wing is definitely one, it's sort of like Phantom Brickworks where like, I had it all over the place in my potential ranking.
Yeah.
I in the current moment, am almost leaning more towards Nathan right now because I think there's only 2 songs on here with vocals. It's
Sleep on the Wing and Oak Moss. Yeah.
And Oak Moss, and they are both absolutely incredible. And
I love Oak Moss.
I also think like the majority of the instrumentals on here, Couple Swim is gorgeous.
So lovely. I
Miss
fucking
Letter
love that.
Hassett absolutely feels like it came off of a Nickel Creek album. Milky Way of a Rattling Hope is stunning, and I love the way it sort of like tumbles over itself. I don't know how to say it, but Opox is beautiful. Crocus is this weird, like...
this little fucking bass experiment that he's filtered through to kind of mess with the waveform a little bit.
Yeah.
That came up in my interview with him of like how he created that. I'm like, oh shit, son. Like, it was crazy.
So,
and then like watching Thus the Heron is All Pool sounds pretentious as fuck, but then actually sounds with what the title is somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you would...
I would hear everybody else's what would be in this. Because last time I was on, there was always ranges. There are segments.
Yeah. And I feel like with this, at this point, like with Bibio, it's a lot harder because although he has clearly defined eras, he does enough weird things within them where it doesn't... it's one of those things where, like, we talked about Hand Cranked, and I honestly feel like, in my personal opinion, we talked about the bad Bibio album. You know, I feel like at this point, like, because, like, there are people, I'm sure, who fucking love Fi to Death and what it does, even though it's kind of a, hodgepodge of different things. But really, if we look at all his albums are hodgepodges, but just how good is the hodgepodge? How good is the dog's breakfast, as you so wonderfully use, in a phrase I literally hadn't heard prior to this?
Really?
I really hadn't, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's very...
I'm from Utah.
It's like... You're from Utah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of conflicted because, like, obviously, I love everything that's next, or that's left, everything that's left. I could see Mineral Love going here. I could see Sleep on the Wing going here. I'm gonna throw out my personal
I think we just need to talk about the other albums at this point
nomination?
with the way
Yeah,
we're going things.
yeah.
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
number 4 would be Silver Wilkinson.
Oh.
I think you just stabbed him in the heart a little bit.
I love this album, but this is the one I think that this one suffers from sequencing. I think
Yes.
the
yes.
first 4 songs, and let me clarify, I think the first Daffodils is stunning, gorgeous, a beautiful composition. Dye the Water Green is lovely, but too long. But then to get through Wolf and Mirroring All to finally get to A Tout Allure, I'm almost checked out by that point. You know, and I just feel like even not changing any of the songs and switching them out with something else, if you just sequenced this album differently, I think I would enjoy it more, which is part of why I'm putting it here.
I can totally understand that, because part of the reason that I
Don't
would
let him
put it
gaslight you,
higher-
Nathan. I'm just saying.
but like it's all subjective. We forget that it's all subjective.
I mean, except
but
it's not
like
definitive. It's Chartographers, baby.
the record I got into Bibio was the Green EP,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, I think that one, again, because what we said earlier is because it's only like 6 or 7 songs long, it's edited incredibly well,
Yeah.
because it's just like, here are the exact songs in the exact sequence that almost tell this like journey or this story, because there's no troughs, there's no downtime. It's like each song immediately segues into the next way, into not just because the melodies or the harmonies might pick up on something that's from the last song, but the emotional through line works perfectly as well. Silver Wilkinson is the best and worst of kind of blowing that out. There's definitely more bloat, but you also get more of his dancey stuff, rather than the Green EP is very meditative. Silver Wilkinson goes from extremely monk-like and meditative to
pastoral.
upbeat and dancey, something that you could hear in a club. And I love that duality. It's not edited quite well enough, and I think I agree with you. If you could sequence it slightly differently, it would work better. But I love that record, so I would definitely push it upwards. But I understand we keep coming back to sequencing. That keeps being a theme here.
Yeah. And also, Silver Wilkinson, that was the record that got me on the Bibio kick in the first place. So there was always going to be a little light in my heart for Silver Wilkinson, even if I can admit it doesn't have my favorite moments, and I'm specifically looking at Business Park. Which is I get what he's going for, and it just doesn't work for me. But let me tell you something. A Tout Allure, I mean, as much as we talk about, and you always go through like the individual songs, but like A Tout Allure practically is an album-defining, career-defining moment for me. It is so fucking perfect as a song. It is just so beautiful. It does everything I want in a song, and I keep coming back to it time and time again. And it's one of those things where between that and then you go into Sycamore Silhouetting, which is honestly like I kind of rediscovered this week. It didn't really do anything when I first got it, and kind of like this week I'm like, this is actually lovely. And then oh, fucking You. Jesus Christ, I love that song so goddamn much. This is him at his most kind of beatscapey, but it is so fucking great.
It works.
Yes, and
that's when the beats work.
And it's one of those things where like you have these more beat-based things within this kind of little like more ambient kind of like, and I mean, and truly the first Daffodils sounds like a better sepia-toned song than all of Hand Cranked, if that makes any sense, just in terms of the vibe, because he loves those 70s synths. He loves making it sound like a, you know, like a television sitcom theme, but like mellowed out, man. You know, like there's just so much to it that just I think is dynamic and incredible. But like Silver Wilkinson, I think my biggest thing this week was with Silver Wilkinson is that the highlights for me are insane. And it's one of those things where the other moments that I don't think there's a bad song on here, maybe except for Business Park, but just it's one of those things where this was an album that I love a lot, and I also just happen to love the highlights a lot. A Mineral Love, I can take the lesser songs because I feel like so many of those songs are like my all-time favorites personally. Like there's so many on there, but I can see why you would want to go ahead and put Silver Wilkinson on there. And I wouldn't say I'm necessarily opposed to that, but let me just say, since we're talking about it, since we're here, let's talk about My Boca too, because I feel like that just needs to be a conversation that happens at this point.
That would be the record I would put here personally.
For 4?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think so.
please.
Not a Mineral Love?
Okay, let's talk about my book before we make any rash decisions.
So the thing is that I think basically up until Silver Wilkinson, it felt like there was a joke about the guy who made System Shock 2 and BioShock and then BioShock Infinite, you know, the video game series, that there was a teacher behind him saying, good, now do it again properly, like each time. And it feels like for the first couple of records, that was almost the Bibio thing of like, okay, so we have these different modes. There will be an ambient-ish song here. There will be a British Isles folk-ish song here. There will be a neo-soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it felt like each time he kind of, whether it was the production or the guests he brought on, the mixing, or even just the hooks, he became like a little more astute of like, kind of what Taran was saying earlier of like getting away from like, hey, let's sandwich this between 4 minutes of ambient music for no reason.
Right.
And it kept going like that, I think, until Silver Wilkinson and Mineral Love, which I think were the two best of like kind of cutting out the fat. I have different problems with Mineral Love, but it's not the fat. It's some of the songs.
Sure.
Mind Boketh sounds like kind of like, we've finally gotten this baseline that this is what a Bibio album is going to be, even though it's kind of all over the place. This is what a Bibio album is going to be. And that's why I enjoy it more than Ambivalence Avenue and Vingetting the Compost, because it feels like a better version of both of those, but still suffers from a couple of the issues of both of those records of, again, sequencing issues. And what I wanted to give to y'all, what is your opinion of Take Off Your Shirt? Because I don't know what my opinion is.
I think it sounds great at a strip club, personally. That's just me.
I have seen some people talking real shit about Take Off Your Shirt this week and, you know, trolling the comments and the reviews and things. I really like it. I think it sounds like a solid Spoon song. You know? Like,
okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Is it doing anything new? No, but it's fun. It's fun. And in a discography that goes literally everywhere, like, of course he has a song like this, you know?
For a kid that
That's
grew up
fine.
loving metal, one of the things that came up in my interviews with him was like, do you like touring? Do you like doing live shows? And he's like, not really. You know, he likes doing like little video vignettes that he does in the forest where he just loops himself, but he doesn't like performing live. It just doesn't do any for him. But he remembers that like the thing he wants to do in terms of performance is go to a pub and have a, you know, like a beer or a glass of wine while listening to jazz. Like that's what he wants in terms of a live show. But he talked about in my interviews that it was different because as a kid, he went to hard rock shows. He went to mosh pits. He's like, I don't know what happened, but I stopped being that kid after a while. But it's one of those things where, like, for me, hearing that kind of like, okay, Take Off Your Shirt makes sense because it's not hard rock, but it's one of those things, of course you wanted to make kind of a rock moment. And also, I just envision a stripper lying on the floor, hitting their acrylic heels on the stage, you know, as that song is playing. It just makes sense to me. That's the vibe I get. Stripper music, Bibio.
I think that's the problem, is I'm so used to Bibio music being like, yes, I'm reading Thoreau at a pond. And then suddenly there's a fucking song where I can hear it in a strip club, and the internal emotional whiplash is just too much.
And
I mean, you have to remember that this is the same man who in 2017 put out Phantom Brickworks, an entirely ambient album, and also the EP Beyond Serious, a tribute to French 90s house. So, like, that's just who he is. There's gonna be some whiplash.
He contains multitudes. I will say, as much as I love a lot of things off of Mein Boke, Pretentious might be my least favorite song. It gets to a place eventually, but
it's not very good.
Oh,
It's
that
not very
fucking
good.
like discordant little guitar thing he starts with. It takes full 2 minutes for it to fade out, and I'm just like, dude, Jesus Christ, it just wears me.
So I have complicated feelings about this record. I mean, all of the four that we have left are.
I think we all do, really.
They're like
yeah.
they're sort of nebulously like each jumping to first place at different points. I personally think this album has his highest batting average. I would not skip any of these songs. Now, I don't necessarily think that it has highlights on the same level that maybe some of his other things that we're talking about still do, but I think it's really, really solid.
As an album experience.
As an album experience, I also think the sequencing is right. And even the songs that maybe aren't as strong still have enjoyable parts to them. Like, anything new isn't necessarily my favorite, but I still enjoy it. Same thing for the
It doesn't
title
bring
track,
anything new to the table,
or
really.
Feminine Eye.
Feminine Eye, honestly, though, that is kind of a glorious composition. Also, as
Great
much
song.
as kind of like the joyous kind of goof that it is, K is for Kelson is like really.
I love Case for Kelson.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that sounds like a freaking Todd Terj track. Tell me I'm wrong.
I do want to say, and this is because we're doing the nitty-gritty criticism
Yeah.
and we're ranking, I think basically everything beyond Ambivalence Avenue, if I was re-ranking from that year, all of them would be in my top 30 of the year. Like in terms of if I was looking back at Mind Boketh, Silver Wilkinson, Mineral Love, maybe not Mineral Love, but like Ribbons and Sleep on the Wing, I know. But like a majority of these albums would at least have a song on my songs of the year.
Yeah.
And a solid 4 or 5 of them would be on my albums of the year list. So when we're doing this nitty-grittiness, it's because we're directly comparing them rather than the year it came out in, the larger context.
Yes,
You know?
yes,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I fully understand that and appreciate that too.
Yeah.
I will say that I was probably very impressed with Mind Book coming in here. I'd say that like the title track is something that's like it's fine for me, but the way he ends with Saint Christopher is just I love that. It almost kind of invokes It Was Willow in terms of like that perfect amount of like the right amount of beats with the right amount of acoustic guitar to create that space that your head just gets lost in and swims in and whatnot. So, I can understand why Take Off Your Shirt can be seen as a little bit of a what the fuck, but also it's kind of one of those things, kind of like the interludes on an Outkast album when they do it well. Like, it's kind of like that little reset that you have to kind of like get back into place, a kind of a shock to the system or a way to kind of get you back on there. So, I think that of all things, especially since we're at an hour at this point in terms of talking about all things Bibio, I'd say that we kind of have our individual things, and I think it's kind of down to these 4 records. I am still a Mineral Love stan, through and through, but I understand it may not get to number 1. I understand that. I'd say in terms of Mind Bokeh, Silver Wilkinson, and Mineral Love, and Sleep on the Wing, what could we agree on as a number 4? I would say Sleep on the Wing, but I don't know, I'm just tossing it out there unless anyone has super strong opinions the other way.
I think that's fine.
Same here. No, same here,
Through
because
clenched
I was
teeth.
talking about the dopamine stuff, but the thing is, it is and I appreciate super concise albums, but it is something where it is tiny, compact, great for what it is, and then you immediately move on afterwards.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of a description of you?
No, absolutely.
I'm such a jerk.
Great, so number 4, Sleep on the Wing.
Number 4, bullying.
Matheo. Alright, cool. In that case, listen, I can read the writings on the wall, I can see things there. If we need to put a Mineral Love at number 3, we can. I just want it to be known that it is my absolute all-time favorite Bibio album altogether.
I mean, my choice for number 3 at this point would be Silver Wilkinson.
Nathan, say that for yourself.
My heart!
Is that your number 1?
It is. It is my number 1. I would... Man, this is the problem
This
at
is one of the
point
hardest ones we've ever had.
Yeah. Maybe this goes into the happy hour, but I'm always curious about people's opinions on albums, of whether what you were talking about earlier in terms of like, is this a good batting average versus the highlights are so good that I'll overlook the troughs.
Right.
And that feels like the problem with these 3 is each one of them kind of has a different version of that.
Yeah.
Right, no, and I completely agree, because Mind Bokeh is a good, solid album with not as many weak points, but for me, the highlights off of Mineral Love, it's especially all together in one place, are just so utterly transportive that it's just, for me, like, it's just so obviously I can overlook some of the flaws or lesser tracks as it is, just because I feel like it is like some of his best all-time songs are just on that album in one place. So maybe that provides a little bit of bias, uncertainly, I understand, but at the same time, I'm not opposed to acknowledging the bias and still holding my opinion that it's his best album, you know?
Oh yeah.
Where do you stand?
Where are you feeling? What do you feel?
I'm so conflicted.
We all are.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna go say this isn't necessarily how I was feeling going in, but this is my current ranking. 3, 2, 1 would be Silver Wilkinson at 3, Mineral Love at 2 and Mind Bouquet at number 1.
What's yours,
I
Nate?
think I feel like we're all different on this because I would go probably Mineral Love, then Mind Bouquet, then Silver Wilkinson. See, we're all like not quite.
Yeah.
There's no lineup.
Well, but listen, I said it before. You brought up some valid points. I still will take it to my grave. I'm fine with putting a Mineral Love at number 3 for the sake of consensus.
Okay.
I really, truly am.
And so now it's a knockdown fight between Silver Wilkinson and Mind Bouquet.
Yes. So, what are you gonna do, baby? What are you feeling? What are you? Nathan, of course, is Silver Wilkinson.
He's Team Silver Wilkinson.
Yeah.
What are you team? You're the tiebreaker here at this.
Yeah.
Time.
Well, you brought up some good fucking points, both of y'all. I hate y'all. I really do. Because I understand Silver Wilkinson is the album that got me into it. It will always hold a place in my heart. But also listening to all of his discography this week kind of highlighted some of the lesser tracks on it as well for me. And while I'd say the highlights on Mind Bouquet may not be as immediate or as striking or as incredible, as an album, I think it is stronger in terms of its sequencing and listing. And even though Mineral Love is obviously the number 1 album of all time, if I were to do anything, I would throw the tie-breaking vote behind Mind Bouquet at number 1. Which is still, you gotta keep in mind, this top 4 is still so fucking good. But
it's incredible.
Shit, this top 6.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
All right, in that case, you know what? Let's just go ahead. Let's just do it. Let's just go ahead and have our Lock It In segment brought to you by Glad. Let's go ahead. Number 10 is Hand Cranked. Number 9 is Phi. Number 8 is Phantom Brickworks. Number 7 is Vignette the Compost. Number 6 is Ambivalence Avenue. Number 5 is Ribbons. Number 4 is Sleep on the Wing. Number 3 is A Mineral Love. Number 2 is Silver Wilkinson. And number 1 is the Beyond Serious EP. It's so good. There's grooviness, there's synths, there's keyboards. I'm just kidding. It is Mind Bouquet in one of the most contentious ones we've ever done. But that's also because Bibio, in case you're listening, we love all your fucking albums so much, and this has genuinely been a joy. I mean, we have our ranking at number 1, but as you can clearly see from our all wildly different opinions about what the number 1 should be, it's a lot of good shit to go through. It really, really is.
Yeah.
But also, most importantly, there's a lot we need to talk about. That's what a happy hour mini-sode is for, and we're going to be doing it right after this.
And I feel like even on the albums, some of these top 3, I didn't even talk about my favorite songs. So,
yeah. So we're going to do that. So in the meantime, though, Nathan,
Yes.
thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
We
It's a
appreciate,
delight.
we appreciate
So
it.
much fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't wait to have you on for the happy hour mini-sode. Taran, as always, thank you for going on this journey.
You got it, bitch.
All right, and most importantly, if you have thoughts or opinions, including your controversial number 1 pick, we want to hear about it. So make sure you go ahead, find us on our Facebook, send us something on our Twitter, send us an email at thechartographers@gmail.com, or if you really want us to read your thing, leave us a review, because we love the reviews. They help elevate the podcast. It means a lot if you throw one on Apple or whatever place we have podcast reviews. Do that, but most importantly, keep on listening, because you know that will be. Talk to you soon, everybody. Have a good one. Goodbye. So it's going. We're going to have the theme song pumping in our ears. You can't hear it, sadly. Just know it's super funky. You've heard it. We're dancing. We're listening to some fucking Sam Sparro and shit. Oh, yeah.